Hey, what's up, y'all? This is another permaculture Q&A. Remember, if you have any permaculture Q&A submissions, then leave them down below in the comments with the hashtag permaculture Q&A at the beginning of it, and then we'll maybe feature it in a future video. Also, if you need any permaculture consultations, then hit the links down below. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so first question is from Uncle Buck Knows Everything. No, Uncle Bubba Knows Everything, sorry. Hey boss, I live near Galveston and I'm trying to grow fruit trees. We have very shallow water table here. Any suggestions on planting in my area? So I see two options basically. You can either grow some trees that like wet feet, like there's elderberry, there's any like bunch of different types of mulberry will do well there. You could do chinkapins, you could do swamp mayhaws. There's a bunch of options there. Or you could dig swales. You can see back here, there's one swale right here next to me, and then there's another swale over there in the distance. But it gives you some elevation from that shallow water table. And these ones are the small ones, and you can see the trees do very well here, and we have a very shallow water table here. You could probably hear me squishing in the water right now. When I was digging the post holes for the garden over here, every time I would dig a hole, it would fill up with water. But as you can see here as well, this is a larger swale. This one is 6 feet wide, 1.5 to 2 feet deep. Here's the ditch part right here, and then you can see the mound. But as you can see, it gives you some elevation. So like this is, let me change that. There we go. Right here is like ground level. Right here, and then over there is the mound, and it gives you maybe 1.5 to 2 feet of elevation from this high water table. And then in here in the ditch, you can see there's the water, and it gives the water a place to go. And if you're thinking it's like too flat to do swales, it's never too flat to do swales. It can be too steep, but it's never too flat to do swales. So yeah, dig some swales if you want to. That'll open up your options as far as like what you can and can't plant. And if you don't want to dig swales, then just plant some, trees that like wet feet. All right, this next question. Bear with me, it's going to take a minute. This is from Larry Dompierre, I believe. Let me know if I'm wrong. Hi, I am trying to restore and build up soil that spends about 6 months soggy on flat, unsloped soil. What would the order of operations be? I'm hoping to build some tree guilds with fodder trees and some fruit mix, bring in some of my own homemade active compost, plant some trees, and cover both with cardboard and straw. The land is about 1 acre towards the back of my property. Thanks and God bless. Get that baby girl a strawberry. Oh, so this is from a video from a while ago. She did not get the strawberry. Just quick little update, I have a 6-month-old daughter. I had some strawberries in the garden over there. She was not 6 months old at the time. This was a while ago, and she wasn't old enough to have it yet. Anyway, she's eating like solids now. She tried sweet potato the other day. Absolutely hated it. Oh. She acted like it was just the worst possible thing we could do to her. But anyway, back to your question. What would the order of operations be on a scenario like that? So like the previous question, I was saying you could dig swales. It seems like you're in a similar scenario. So the first thing I would do is dig swales. This is going to give your elevation for the roots, and it's also going to give a place for the water to go. Now, if you're not sure how to dig swales, then I think I did a video on it already. I'll have to come up with another video here soon showing you guys how to dig the swales. But that would be step one. Then I would go ahead and plant your trees and then cardboard and mulch around every single tree. You can do fodder trees depending on what the acre looks like. You may or may not need to actually plant any fodder trees. Like, let me show you an example. Like in the back of this property, it's pretty overgrown. All those trees, for the most part, I can clip dry, use as tree hay, and use them as like animal fodder and stuff like that. There's only a few varieties that I wouldn't give access to my animal, just because like black locust and honey locust have some pretty severe thorns sometimes. The animals do love it whenever there's like green branches and the thorns are still kind of flimsy. Like they would still eat them even if the thorns are hard. It's just, I wouldn't take the risk. And also like dried cherry leaves. Now, a lot of people have said like, hey, my animals eat cherry leaves with no issues at all. I think the issue comes up whenever like the leaves are dried. So Those are really the only two things. Like false blue indigo leaves also, those are apparently toxic. But if your animals have free choice, if they have a bunch of options, then they're not going to eat anything that's toxic. They only eat a bunch of things that are toxic whenever they run out of other food sources. Also, there are medicinal levels to some toxic plants. Anyway, I don't mean to go down a whole diatribe of fodder plants, but those are things, fodder trees are things, unless there's no trees on the property, they're just things that I wouldn't actively try to plant. Anyway, I keep getting back on that topic of tree hay, but the point I'm saying is do your earthworks first, and then cardboard and mulch around each individual tree, and then plant your guilds out from there. And that's the basic order of operations without knowing anything else about your property. Alrighty. This next one is from Natalia Setskov. Yeah, sorry, I know I pronounced that wrong, but you know, I did the best I could. I'm in Texas. How did you split these long trees lengthwise? Did you do it with wedges? I have a dozen of cedar trees from the land development for the house that I do not know what to do with. I can see using them for so many things in the garden if they are smaller and thus manageable. Alrighty, so I've got some logs over there. There's really only one way to show you, and that's by doing it. So let's go ahead and do it. Alrighty, so we'll keep it small just to keep it quick because I do have some more questions to answer. But basically, I'm going to take this wedge and I'm going to take this splitting maul. And if it's already cut down, I'm going to try to find a natural crack that's already in there. And that should make the job 10 times easier. Also, I come in from the outside at an angle. Hopefully I don't hit the tripod. And just tap it in just to get it started. Now this log might be too small. I just keep tapping this in until I get something over here on this side. Now this isn't going to be perfectly flat or straight or anything like that, but it's still a smaller dimension than what it was. And just go back and forth tapping until it continues on down the length of the tree. And it also helps to have another, like a woodsman's axe or a little hatchet or something like that to cut the fibers. This seems to be a little sharp enough, almost sharp enough. But I'm just going to continue on down and basically leapfrog these wedges in over and over again and cut as I need to. And just go nice and slow. I'm not trying to make any large gaps or large jumps or anything like that. It's just going to make the wood look a little uglier in my opinion. I could be wrong. There might not be a issue with it, but in the few that I've tried to do that with, it makes it ugly. So continue this on down. There we go. That's basically it. Like it gets a little wavy whenever you start hitting branches and stuff like that, but that's split board right there. And then you can clean it up with a woodsman's axe or hatchet or whatever. There you go. Hopefully that answers your question. 2 wedges and a maul. Turn-farm. How do you keep fire ants out of a compost pile? And then the next question that goes along with it, because it's the same answer, is from Natalia Svetkov, which turns out she just asked a question. I didn't even pick up on that, sorry. I did everything you showed, or at least thought I did, but the middle of the pile did not get hot at all once I took the first third off. What do I do now? And she's wondering, like, does she finish it? Does she flip it? Does she leave it alone? Let's get into that. How do you heat up a compost pile and how do you make sure your compost pile stays hot enough, and what to do next time if your recipe this time did not stay hot. You basically need to make sure that there's enough high nitrogen food in there. So if it's cooling off too soon, or if you need to reignite it. Oh yeah, by the way, I should say the way you get rid of fire ants is keep a hot compost pile. So let's say if it's not hot enough, you need to add a high nitrogen source to it. This clover right here is a high nitrogen source. So that's even another reason to grow a clover cover crop, is so that way you have access to a very high nitrogen source when you need it. When you need to. Also, fresh new grass is a high nitrogen source whenever you get it, like whenever it's, you know, early stages and stuff. So that's how you get rid of fire ants, and that's also how you keep a hotter compost pile. So maybe increase the green material next time you create a 2-ingredient compost pile, or maybe reanalyze the green material that you used. It might not be as high in nitrogen as you think it is, because it might be later on in the succession of the plant's life. Remember, the older the plant gets, like annual plants, the older it gets, the higher in carbon it's going to be. The younger it is, the higher in nitrogen it's going to be. And then, like, if you're in the middle of your pile, just add it to the center and then keep flipping, stay on schedule as usual. Just make sure it comes back up to temperature. Now, speaking of compost, this is from Mary K. Finn. Can you add horse manure to this? Would sprinkling bokashi bacteria on pile help? Yes, you can add horse manure. Just be careful of what is being given to the horse, because horses are one of those animals that people will spend a lot of money to keep healthy. So that means it's getting shot up with all kinds of antibiotics, steroids, all kinds of stuff. So if it's going through like a constant deworming process and all that, I probably wouldn't use it because of how much it's going to set back your compost pile. If it's not going through any of that, then yeah, you can totally add to it. It's going to be lower in nitrogen than most other manures though, so keep that in mind. And then adding bokashi bacteria is only going to help. There's going to be a ton of bacteria that just pop up naturally, but adding some wouldn't hurt. It would be similar to, less diverse then, but it's similar to adding some of your old compost to a new compost pile to kind of inoculate it with soil life. Give it a little kickstart. And our family garden more asks, my daughter has a rabbit hutch in our garden, 35 by 85 feet. Wow, that's a big rabbit hutch. Or maybe your garden's that big. Yeah, I think your garden's that big. We have 22 raised beds with approximately roughly 500 square feet of growing veggies. Is rabbit poop worth putting in my beds for fertilizer? Yeah, rabbit manure is one of those really clean sources of manure that you can use immediately, like as soon as it falls out of the animal. You can throw it straight on your garden beds. There's no issue with that at all. It's awesome worm food. Bacteria are going to love breaking it down. So yeah, there's really no downside to adding rabbit manure. Specifically rabbit manure. Don't run away with that and add like any manure out here willy-nilly, because some of them need to dry out and decompose or go through a composting process first. This is from David Taylor 3946. I live near Dallas in zone 8A and have black gumbo clay that sits on top of calcareous high limestone clay. There's also lots of limestone rocks 6 to 8 inches below the surface. Because of this, we have high soil pH, 7.8 to 8. Are there plants that would be able to condition the soil to allow me to grow low pH plants like blueberries? Absolutely. And actually, the answer to fix the pH, which actually isn't a pH problem, it's a soil life problem. The soil biology is going to make the pH levels very, very site specific. So I could like take one reading 1 inch and then move like half an inch away and it should be a different reading, because there's different soil life extracting different nutrients from the inorganic material like the sands, salts, and clay, or not salts, sands, silts, and clays. So the pH is very, very site specific, so I wouldn't worry too much about pH, but your thought process is going the right way. You do need to plant plants, and those plants need to be pioneer species because they can withstand those either direction, very acidic or very alkaline soils. Some of those pioneer species can be your black locust. They're going to work well there because I'm only like an hour and a half, 2 hours from you, and they're working well right here. But just getting something growing in general is going to be the best solution. So really getting any sort of plants growing out there is going to be awesome. As a general broad area, you could just cast cover crops, and then you might have to seed a couple times unless you do some scatter mulch over that. So yeah, the solution is to start growing plants, start looking into pioneer species. A bunch of options are going to pop up, and see what is preferable to you. See what characteristics you want, see what heights, what types of plants, what functions you want to fill, stuff like that. There's a ton of options. Now, this question is from Joshua 511. I'd like to plant 1 or more rows of walnut, hickories, pecans along the north edge of a field in Zone 6, Missouri. How close to the fence line should I plant? I'm thinking of leaving enough room to mow between the trees and the fence, so 4 to 5 feet, but is this enough space? All right, so you're planting walnuts, hickories, and pecans. So I would take, what's going to be the widest width on those 3 trees? Probably your pecan, if I'm guessing, or walnut. Probably pecan, but that's going to be your widest width. Let's say that width is 30 feet. Then I would plant that tree 15 feet away from my fence line, so that way I can ensure that I get the full harvest of that tree, instead of losing half to the neighbor side, which they may or may not, if it's a field in Missouri, they may or may not know. And if you're going on to the other side of the fence to harvest that material, then it's going to be, I mean, it's just something that you have to get around, and it's not going to be a very efficient movement and stuff. So yeah, if it's 30 feet wide, if you look at the tag and it tells you the approximate width is going to be like 30 feet wide, plant it 15 feet away. That way you can get the full harvest. Hopefully that helps. Anyways, if you guys need any permaculture consultations, hit the links down below. And if you have any permaculture Q&A questions, then leave them down below with the hashtag permaculture Q&A at the beginning of it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.